Were Jews and Greeks the ancestors of all Europeans? What put the Jewish community against the Greeks under Turkish rule? How did a Greek city become the largest Jewish city in the world? And what Jewish names echo the Spanish Inquisition?
Welcome to Not Another Greek History Podcast, the podcast that aims to be exactly what it says. I'm your host, Onoufios Dovletis, and together we'll discover the not-so-frequently told stories of Greece's history that will change the way you view things forever.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we tell the remarkable and tragic story of the Jews of Greece as International Holocaust Remembrance Day is now, January 27th, and it commemorates the liberation of Auschwitz in 1945. The story of the Jews of Greece is a journey that spans 2 millennia, leading from the golden age of medieval Spain to the horrors of 20th century Germany. From Jerusalem to the Alhambra. That we know, the Jews first settled the Iberian Peninsula during the Roman occupation, the Roman Empire, 2,000 years ago. After the Romans destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem in the 1st century, a few years after Jesus died, many Jews were taken as captives or fled as refugees. Some Jews moved there voluntarily to work as merchants or farmers. Some historians believe that Jews arrived with Phoenician traders from modern-day Lebanon, Phoenicians. Iberia was rich in metals like silver and gold, and that made it a land of opportunity. Their culture flourished after the Islamic conquest of Spain, starting in the 700s. This was the golden age of Spanish Jewry, where Jews became famous scholars, doctors, and scientists under Muslim rule. They developed their unique language, called Ladino, which is a form of Old Spanish mixed with Hebrew. However, as Christian kingdoms reconquered Spain, life became hard, leading to the forced expulsion in 1492. Between 40,000 and 200,000 people were forced to leave their homes and property. Damn you, Spanish people, you were the most evil in the whole continent. In the year 1349, a dark shadow moved across Europe. The Black Death was killing millions, and nobody knew why. People were scared and looking for someone to blame. In many parts of France, Germany, and Switzerland, they blamed the Jewish communities. Without any scientific facts about how the plague spread, leaders and common people spread a lie. They claimed that Jewish people were poisoning the local wells to kill Christians. This was not just a small rumor. It led to mass violence. In many towns, innocent people were hunted down and burned alive. This violence did not come out of nowhere. Anti-Semitism was a deep-seated issue in Europe long before the 14th century. The church had already put harsh laws in place that look a lot like the laws we saw in the 20th century. For example, Jewish people were not allowed to work as weavers, shoemakers, carpenters, or bakers. Because they were banned from most jobs, many had to work as moneylenders. Pope Innocent III, passed a law saying that Jewish people had to wear a special yellow mark on their clothes. This was a way to shame them and keep them separate from the rest of society. By the way, that was the same, I'm going to be polite and say that was the same idiot that caused the Fourth Crusade, which led to the sack and takeover of Constantinople, aka nowadays Istanbul, for the next 60 years. It was in 1204. But in the next years, he came up with that incredible idea of using this yellow mark for Jewish people, which of course came back hundreds of years later. So in Basel, in Switzerland specifically, they arrested the Jewish population. On an island in the Rhine River, a wooden house was built specifically for this purpose. Hundreds of people, maybe up to 600, were locked inside and burned alive. The few children who were spared were forced to be baptized and were raised in monasteries. Damn you, Swiss people, you were the most evil on the whole continent. From Spain to Thessaloniki. The expelled Jews from Spain found a vital safe haven under the Ottoman Sultan Bayezid II, who saw their skills as a benefit to his empire, the Ottoman Empire. The single most important city for this community was the Greek city of Thessaloniki, where I was born. It became the largest Jewish city in the world, often shutting down on the Jewish Sabbath. The Sephardim were prized by the Sultan for their skills in trade, diplomacy, and medicine. Sephardim were the Jews from Spain. Jewish figures held high office and became essential to the Ottoman economy. This cooperation and protection from the Muslim rulers often put the Jews at odds with the local Greek population, who were also subjects of the Ottoman Empire but desired self-rule. When the Greek Revolution was about to begin in 1821, the Turks executed the Greek Patriarch of Constantinople, Gregory V, the religious leader of the Greeks and the Christians in general in that part of the world, practically to stop the revolution. His body was sold to Jewish people who desecrated the body and threw it in the sea. That body eventually was found by the Greeks, and he was brought to Athens, where he was buried, where his body anyway is. It's not really buried, it's in a sarcophagus in the Cathedral of Athens. So was that the first time that Jews had moved to Greece? No. We must also remember the older Greek-speaking Romaniote Jews who had lived in Greece for 2,000 years, predating the Sephardim. They are the oldest Jewish community in Europe. Their name came from Romania, not Romania, Romania, and that referred to the Eastern Roman Empire. But that part of the empire practically was Greece. And ironically, believe it or not, although it comes from an occupation, the Roman occupation, the Greeks, even now, sometimes might use the word Romania or Romnios for themselves, for ourselves. It's an absurdity. It happened. I'm not happy about it. But anyway, keep in mind that even in Athens, for instance, or in Corinth, which is very close to Athens, they have excavated marble carvings of menorahs. And we know that there were synagogues in many cities in antiquity. And that's why Paul the Apostle actually went to specific places where there was a Jewish community to address primarily the Jewish people, such as Thessaloniki, Veria, Athens, Corinth, Philippi, and so on. Just as Spanish Jews developed Ladino and German Jews developed Yiddish, the Romaniote Jews developed Yevanic. Yevanic comes from the Hebrew word Yavan, which means Greece. It is essentially the Greek language written with Hebrew letters. While the grammar in most of the words are Greek, it includes many terms from Hebrew and Aramaic, especially for religious items, obviously, or daily Jewish life. This made it a secret language, let's say, that local Greeks couldn't read, and Jews from other countries couldn't understand. After 1492, the large number of Spanish Jews who came to Greece spoke obviously Ladino. Because there were so many, Ladino became the dominant Jewish language in cities like Thessaloniki, and Yevanic began to fade. The Nazis would eventually target both the Sephardim and Romaniote communities. Why wouldn't they? The Holocaust. When Germany occupied Greece after Italy attacked Greece and lost the war, the fate of the Jewish population of about 72,000 people was sealed. The deportations began in Thessaloniki in 1943. with the victims sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau. The story of the survivors, however, is a story of both immense compassion and betrayal from the local Greek population. Thousands of lives were saved through the actions of some courageous Greeks, such as Archbishop Damaskinos, who was the head of the Orthodox Church in Athens. He instructed priests to issue false baptismal certificates to Jewish families. His statue you can see in front of the Cathedral of Athens, which I told you about earlier. The police chief of Athens quietly helped destroy Jewish records and provide false identity papers. And then the island of Zakynthos in the Ionian Sea, it's not in the Aegean Sea, like Mykonos and Santorini, it's on the other side, which includes Corfu. That is, I think, the most famous example. When the Germans demanded a list of the island's 275 Jews, the mayor and the bishop gave the Germans a list containing only two names, their own. So the entire Jewish community of Zakynthos was successfully hidden and survived the war. Sadly, not all encounters were heroic. Some Greeks chose to profit from the tragedy. Mind you, some people didn't profit only from the Jews, but also from the Greeks. In Thessaloniki, after Jewish families were deported, some locals, of course, looted and took over Jewish homes and property. In the countryside, some Jews who went into hiding were denounced German authorities, sometimes for political reasons, or simply for the reward money offered by the Germans. The Romanian communities, especially in places like Ioannina, which is in western Greece, and that was the heart of the Romanian community and culture, were almost completely destroyed by the Germans. Most of the native speakers of Yevanic were murdered, and the few survivors moved to Israel or the United States. In the end, out of the pre-war Jewish population of Greece, over 90% were murdered. And Greece practically has the third highest loss of Jewish population in Europe. Greeks and Jews go thousands of years back. We've talked about this on the first episode of this special, which is Jews and Greece, where I talked about Hanukkah. And if you haven't listened to that, why not give it a go? What are some other parallels between Greek and Jewish culture? We have the incredible stories of Orpheus and Lot. The stories of Orpheus and Lot's wife share a fascinating thematic commonality: the destructive power of looking back when instructed not to, which, to be honest, could even work as a metaphor. Never look back. In the Greek myth of Orpheus, which, by the way, was also featured in the TV series The Sandman, the gifted musician descends into the underworld to bring his beloved wife back, Eurydice, that's Eurydice in English, after she dies from a snake bite. So the god of the underworld, Hades, moved by Orpheus's music, agrees to release Eurydice on one strict condition: Orpheus must walk ahead of her out of the underworld and not look back until they both have reached the world of the living. As they approach the exit, Orpheus turns to see if Eurydice is behind him, and at that very moment, she is pulled back into the realm of the dead forever. Now, in the book of Genesis, Lot and his family are instructed by angels to flee the city of Sodom, which is about to be destroyed due to its wickedness. The explicit command given to them is, "Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain." Lot's wife, however, disobeys the direct order. As they are fleeing, she looks back at the burning city, and for her disobedience, she is turned into a pillar of salt. Pillar of salt, by the way, is a common phrase in Greece, stili alatos. So the core element that binds these two narratives is the prohibition of looking back and the catastrophic consequences of violating that prohibition. In both cases, the act of turning around signifies a lack of faith, a moment of doubt, or an inability to fully let go of the past or the forbidden. The nature of the punishment differs For Orpheus, the consequence is the agonizing re-loss of his beloved. For Lot's wife, the punishment is physical transformation. Orpheus is a personal tale of romantic tragedy, whereas Lot's wife is a religious warning. The motif of the fatal backward glance is so fundamental that it appears in other major world mythologies. Keep in mind, Greece and Israel are really close to each other, far away from these places. In Japan, in Japanese mythology, the creation god Izanagi descends to the underworld Yomi no Kuni. I have an amazing Japanese accent. I don't think so. And he wants to retrieve his wife Izanami after she dies. Izanami agrees to return but makes a single familiar demand. Izanagi must not look at her until they have left the underworld. By the way, you must have noticed that Izanagi and Izanami are very similar. At least to me, they're very close. There's only one letter which is different. Driven by impatience or curiosity, Izanagi breaks the command. He sees Izanami's decayed and monstrous form. He's horrified and flees. Izanami, shamed and enraged, pursues him, but he seals the exit, permanently separating the land of the living from the land of the dead. This version echoes the Orpheus story with its quest to retrieve a spouse, a wife, from death, yet it kind of turns into a horror story. And it's a great story. Which is earlier? The story of Lot's wife is considered to be earlier than the Orpheus myth. The book of Genesis, where the story of Lot's wife appears, is part of the Hebrew Bible, obviously with its traditions and narratives stemming from ancient Near Eastern cultures. The myth of Orpheus, while also ancient, is part of Greek mythology, which flourished during the classical Greek period that we know that it's recorded, okay? And that would be roughly the 8th century BC. Written accounts about Izanami date from the 8th century AD. That's like 1600 years after the ancient stories of Orpheus and Lot. Now, what does the Talmud say about the Greeks? The Talmud's perspective on the Greeks, referred to in Hebrew as Yavan, and it's a complex perspective reflecting the long and sometimes violent history of interaction during the Hellenistic period, which is the period from Alexander the Great onwards, which means towards the end of the 4th century BC onwards. The rabbis acknowledged and even valued certain aspects of Greek intellectual culture, the Greek language. A famous discussion in the Babylonian Talmud states that the Torah may be written in Greek. It could be written as well in Greek. The phrase from Genesis, "May God enlarge Japheth and let him dwell in the tents of Shem," refers to the Greek language. Japheth, a son of Noah, supposedly is the ancestor of the Greeks and all Europeans, and the tents of Shem refer to the Jewish tradition. So this verse is interpreted as giving the Greek language a special status, making it the only language besides Hebrew which is considered to be suitable for writing the Torah scroll. That Japheth was associated with a Greek figure. In Greek mythology, Iapetos is the son of the sky and the earth. He's also an uncle to Zeus and other gods. He then became the father of Prometheus, whom we talked about when I did, by the way, 2 episodes about Frankenstein and Prometheus, the myth of Prometheus, because Frankenstein is based on that myth. So Japheth, Iapetos in Greek. Both Iapetos and Japheth were progenitors of mankind with very similar names and from the same area as we said earlier. So who knows? Yefet, which is the Greek Jewish version of Japheth, was, by the way, a common Romagnat surname. Then we have the condemnation of Greek aggression and culture. This is, of course, the negative aspect, primarily focused on the Seleucid Greeks, Seleucid from that part of Alexander the Great's empire, which was called the Seleucid Empire, which included Israel, and those Greeks attempted to impose the Greek religion on the Jews, and that led to the Maccabean revolt. So the Talmud reflects, as we said, a complex approach. Borrow the science, use the language, but reject the philosophy and political coercion. So talking about using the language, let's not forget that several Jewish-related words come from Greek, and actually some really important ones. Exodus, exodos, means exit in Greek, from the words ex, which is out, and odos, which is street. So the street, the way out of a place, exodos, and it's the, it's not a the. Another one, synagogue, synagogue, it's synagogue. It means to bring people together. Syn always means together in Greek. Vima, that became the word bima, which of course you would have in the synagogue. Vima means step, and from the word step, because you step forward to address someone in antiquity and give a speech, that becomes the word for a speaker's platform, which is elevated usually. And that you would see, for example, the most famous Vima that we have in Greece is in Corinth. And that is the Vima where Paul the Apostle was taken by the Jews in front of the Roman ruler to be put to trial. Last but not least, we have the word Holocaust. Holokaftoma in Greek. Holo means all, everyone, everything, complete. And cost is from the word kafsi, which is burn. So it's like a complete burn. Something and someone that is burnt completely. So what about the Jews in Greece today? The Jewish community in Greece today is very small, probably about 5,000 people. 5,000 people out of a population of roughly 11 million people. Half of them are in Athens. Even after hundreds of years of expulsion since the 15th century from Spain, many community members, for some reason, I will add, for some reason that for me it doesn't make sense, that's what I mean, they still carry Spanish names. Names like Castro, Flores, Serrano, and those serve as an unbreakable link to the golden age in Spain. I, for example, have met someone named Salvador. Keep in mind that I've looked for that guy. I tried to find him because I usually say that to tourists. Jewish people in Greece, you don't just meet. It's not very easy. There are not that many, first of all, and sometimes I think they wouldn't tell you. The civilization that refused to die in Spain and Portugal in 1492 flourished for 400 years in Muslim-occupied Greece and was finally cut down in the heart of Europe. The striking parallels that we mentioned that we have between Orpheus and Lot's wife serve as powerful cautionary tales that resonate across cultures and millennia. They remind us that there are moments in life where progress and salvation depend on focusing forward and resisting the urge to dwell on what must be left behind. And although we must never forget what happened in the past, that last phrase, to not dwell on what should be left behind, applies both to Jews and Greeks. Thank you for listening to this really challenging but fascinating chapter in history. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time, this is Onúfiros Dovletis signing off from Not Another Greek History Podcast.